limiting beliefs are also a huge one. So how else do you think that they could manifest into affecting the style of our parenting or our teaching of the young children?
Well, I think limiting beliefs, like if we look at what I shared earlier about with my daughter, I mean, that's an intense,
Mm.
deep limiting belief. I think we normally talk about limiting beliefs
Yep.
as like, I'm not worthy, or, I can't show up. But limiting beliefs is it's just a web of, and just depends as what's happened to
Mm.
you. But, the limiting beliefs can limit our children. They can become our children's limiting belief. Something that I've really been working on, like growing up and like not with much money. And then on the other side, I had a parent who was a drug dealer, so money was an interesting thing for me, and those beliefs. One, I didn't respect money. Money comes and goes. That was my mindset. So my spending was quite like, intense. And then also scarcity mindset of having a young mum on the benefit, just barely getting by. So it was, to me, money has always felt unsafe, and I felt I was passing that on to my children, talking constantly about not having enough, and passing those stresses on. I can't get that because it's not enough, and like something like that, and then that becomes their story. So I've really been trying to work on changing that, and without having that awareness on those beliefs, you can't change it, and you just pass it on. Another common one I see is like body of women, passing their body image issues on to the next generation. Those limiting beliefs, definitely guilty, but like, looking at yourself in the mirror in front of your children or things like that. Um, or even, not showing up by being quiet, all those things that we do is the
Mm.
blueprint for our children of what they're going to do.
Yeah. Yeah, limiting beliefs is such a big one. It goes deep, doesn't it? Because I think if we could talk in terms of like practical tools of what we can do to try and assess our limiting beliefs, it all comes back to that self-awareness.
Mm,
So it's like same thing with mentioning about money, because we were always, we had this big flash house, so everyone thought we had all this money, but actually no, the bank owned the house, and it looked like we had lots of money, but we really didn't, and we had a lot of it was like no frills or budget or supermarket shopping. No, you can't get that, or you can't get
mm,
that. No, we don't have that, or we can't afford that. No, your dad's got to work nights to afford that. And I hear those limiting beliefs, those stories replaying in my mind. And if my son goes to ask for something, I'll go, huh, and I'll catch myself before it comes out, because I'm growing that awareness. And instead of saying, no, we can't afford that, I'll say something more like, um, for instance, oh, we need to be very conscious of what it is that we're buying, because we don't want it to end up in the landfill,
mm,
or kind of talking more about like the circular economy, and like catching myself in the act and then shifting to reframe those thoughts.
mm. Every belief, every single belief, there is something behind it, a version of you, an
Mm.
experience. Every belief, and there might be multiple, that I'm not worthy, I'm not enough. The only way to really remove limiting beliefs is through the body. You have to process
Mm.
what it is from that experience, because when we still have the unresolved emotions and stuff from the experience, I can't think of one. I'll probably go way too rogue, so I won't. But like from an experience, it creates a belief, right? So if we have an experience and it doesn't move, because emotions move, and it doesn't move, then we create the belief it
Yes.
was my fault or it wasn't. Like we just, and that depends on what happened. So then that instills within you, and that unresolved emotion is there attached with that belief. So to really move the limiting beliefs, we have to start looking at where does it come from? So like for me, I had like a massive abandonment wound and a rejection wound, and I had a
Mhm.
belief that I'm not worthy of love. I think I had another belief. No, I know I did. Of everybody leaves, and I would
Mhm.
find myself. So a coping thing that I did with that limiting belief was I would push people away before they would get close, because everybody leaves anyway. So I would just push people away. And I would
Okay. Yeah.
find myself like literally, so let's say for instance, like my partner wouldn't put the bread away or something. I would want to just like break up with him. And and I really had to start like every time we had a fight, I wanted to end it because I slowly realized once I was building that awareness was I'm afraid that everybody leaves and it comes from the abandonment wound. And so, what I started doing, every time this limiting belief would come up in the situation, if it wasn't rational, I would start asking myself, like just in the body, like, where have I felt this before? And every time you
Mm.
ask yourself that, like, let's say, like an opportunity, like if your son asks for something and you can feel something coming out, it's like if you catch yourself, instead of just giving him the better, you know, the better words, actually asking yourself as
Mm.
well, wait, who's coming up with this? Like, which version of me is here right now? But a lot of the time, and what I see
Yes.
online specifically, and like in courses that I've done, when we do limiting beliefs, they don't go into that. It's all about
Mm.
reframing the mind. But the mind is only looping what the body is remembering. So if we really want the mind to stop
Yeah.
looping, we have to go into the body. And it doesn't have to be like breath work every time. It doesn't have to be you got to book in a therapy
Mm.
session and do like mad somatic therapy. I mean, that shit helps. But you could literally just ask yourself, who is this right now? Where have I felt this before? And then
Mm.
when you do and you bring it out, you can just acknowledge yourself. And that's like, the reparenting part is giving yourself the validation
Mm.
that's actually okay, and just acknowledging it. And sometimes that's enough and sometimes it's not. And then you go and do the breath work, to go deeper into it. But yeah, often with the limiting beliefs, that can be really helpful.
And so, just to clarify for our listeners, when you're asking yourself, "Where have I felt this before?" Are you going into your body and saying, "Whereabouts in my body have I felt this before?" Is that like where you're going to breathe into tension if you've got a
I
specific
would more be
area, or
asking like which version of me. So when I say
oh,
where,
right, yeah,
so let's say one time I was having an argument with my partner and I was like, where have I felt this before? And my mind, when I sat with the
hmm
sensation of what was actually happening in that moment, which was like in my chest, and I was like, oh my God, this feels
hmm
way too irrational for what's just happened. And and then my mind came up to this time when I was 14 and my dad left. Often the emotion will come up and it's so intense that we want to push it away, or we'll gaslight ourselves out
yeah,
of it. And that's so natural. We all do that. But if we can sit with the discomfort of it long enough, which usually is just a few minutes of actually sending all our focus on the sensation, a memory will usually come forward. And when I say memory,
mm,
I want to like just make it clear for the people that are listening, because a lot of people aren't visual and I'm not really visual.
hmm
And memory can just be an inner knowing. Like sometimes a memory is just
yeah,
you just know, okay, this is when I was 8 or 9. Like you just know. So it doesn't always have to be. Don't get so caught up on when we're working with the body. It's not always about the visual, which some people get so wrapped up in, but it's just connecting with that inner knowing and allowing space.
not having to have a full cinematography in your
Yeah.
mind playing out every detail. And I think that's what you talk about a lot is not having to intellectualize and figure the whole thing out and to answer every unanswered
Mm.
question. But yeah, as you say, going into that sensation and allowing that inner knowing to kind of bubble to the surface. And this is a really good opportunity for us to just finish up by talking about reparenting our inner child, why this is so important, and why it's such a pivotal piece of your work.
Reparenting is really crucial part of the healing journey, especially when you're working with inner children, because there were parts that you needed, and often those things that you needed was, safety, comfort, reassurance, to be seen, to feel loved. It's usually associated with connection, or our basic hierarchy needs, survival needs that all humans need to have. And reparenting allows you, because a lot of the time when we've got this stuff looping in the background, we're staying in the victim energy where we're pouring our power away, waiting for somebody else to give us what we need. So yeah, reparenting is really important when doing trauma work or inner child work or even limiting beliefs and that stuff, because with these beliefs and these inner versions of you is usually needs that weren't met. And so when we work on reparenting, not only are we able to, self-soothe, self-regulate those past versions of us, which will directly impact the present version of you, but something that is so powerful of reparenting is that with memory, we're constantly consciously or unconsciously retrieving memories and bringing them forth. Time and space, the body doesn't know it. So when we are operating unconsciously, we're bringing memories forward. And the thing with memory is it's inaccurate. So every time you bring a memory
Mm.
forward, which can be triggered through the body by what is living in there, you're actually storing it back worse. And so well, not always worse, but common with limiting beliefs and stuff when it's left unaddressed, is we catastrophize the experience, people, and all that stuff further every time we bring it forward. So a lot of the trauma we actually re-trigger ourselves. So when we're doing reparenting, we can bring it forward and we can actually change the way it feels in
Mm.
our bodies. So although we can't change the event that happened, we can change how it feels within our body. So like a real good example I have of this is, when I was working on a version of me that was 9, let's say, a lot of the stuff as well of reparenting is like when we go to work with a certain event that's happened for us, there's things that have led up to that have helped create the way that event has impacted you. So when I was working with this 9-year-old version of me, she was already so
Mm.
shut off. And when I went further back to when I was like 3, I had this experience with my mum. And actually, all I wanted was a hug, but that didn't happen. And so when this event happened when I was 9, I had already implemented a belief since I was 3 that nobody cared about me. And so when I went back instead and worked and did reparenting on the 3-year-old, loved her, gave her what she needed, all through like somatic meditation. When I got to working with the 9-year-old, because I had changed the way that felt in my body, it actually changed the way the 9-year-old version worked with me. And then it also impacted the present version of me now, because memory doesn't know right or wrong. It's like you have two opportunities there. You can bring a memory forward and you can put it back and make it worse, or you can bring it forward and you can, bend the truth but put it back so your body feels different. And that's like the power with reparenting, is that it is, it can literally change the way trauma sits and feels within your body, which will change the way your perspective in the world, your perspective of yourself, your belief system. And with all of that stuff will come as well changing your relationships. If you've got low self-worth and all this unresolved stuff, you're probably going to connect with people that because you attract what you believe you are. So you're going to have those relationships that mirror those inner beliefs, where if you start working on those beliefs, then, those relationships will change, and, the opportunities you go for, the risks that you take, it's just an endless domino effect of how it will change your
Yeah,
life.
so interconnected, isn't it? Our limiting beliefs and how will they stem from our childhood. And I think it's just so powerful. It's something that I've not only discovered just like semi recently in the scheme of like the healing journey, but I feel like this is something that
Mm,
if people started here and realize that reparenting happens in the body, that we actually have the power within ourselves to heal ourselves, not seeking outside gurus to try and retrieve healing from
mm,
them, but realizing that we are everything we need. Like we can reparent ourselves. And something that
mm,
I have partaken in that you specialize in is your trauma timeline therapy. And say somebody was going to work on that. How does that look? And does it have to be under a specific, like, does it have to be with a therapist, or is that something that people can kind of open that can of worms on their own? Can they do it safely? How does all that?
it's kind of nuanced. You know, when working with inner child, where people go wrong is creating the space that you're working in is
Mm-hmm.
so important, for so many different levels. When you're working with inner child, limiting beliefs, but deep subconscious stuff, so things that you're actually not aware of, like shadow work and that, it's really important that your environment, even if no one else is there, that you actually create a really safe space, because the parts of you aren't going to fully, like how I said, I like having my curtains closed. I like being, if I'm just literally sitting in the lounge with the lights on and I'm doing inner child work, I'm not gonna go to the depths that I could. There's also a rule that I have, when we're doing this work, is that you stay in observer. So if you are not in the right mind space, you should not touch inner child stuff or reparenting. So don't do it when you're distraught and fuck, I just want to feel better now. Let me just go in and do that, because you're actually going to approach it from
Mm-hmm.
victim energy. And so, a good way to tell whether you should be doing reparenting work or inner child work is asking yourself, um, if you're seeking justice or why,
Mm-hmm.
don't touch it. So, when we're going in to learn why or to get justice for a situation, that's the close it off. Um, but if you can stay an observer and you can actually step in and do like a meditation with yourself, a really like beautiful way to do this safely without needing somebody is just not touching the trauma and just meeting an inner version of you and playing
Mm-hmm.
with them and saying affirmations and just connecting with them in like a 15-minute meditation or something. That could be really powerful. If you were dealing with deep trauma, I'd probably say it's good to have somebody
Yeah.
guiding you through, so that you know that you're staying an observer. Because when I work with clients, it's not that I just guide them through when I do one-to-one and do the therapy stuff, I don't just ask them or just tell them what to do. I actually get them to talk back to me of what they're seeing and experiencing, because if they start going into why, I've got an opportunity to steer them out. If I wasn't there and they were going into the why, they might stay there, and then the emotions begin to take over, and then your body's like, it's happening again, and then you literally
Yes.
re-traumatize yourself. Whereas if you've got somebody there, it's just, safer. But I mean, also, and I literally taught this to myself, so I mean, it depends on where you're at in your journey and how grounded you can
Mm-hmm.
stay. um
Being in
but
that
yeah, it really depends. It's like that
observer, being the
nuance,
key.
that awareness. Yeah, observer being the key thing. And something I like to like remind my clients is there's many reasons why we don't ask why, because one, why is putting the power outside of us, whereas we're coming back into, when we're doing reparenting, we're taking the power back. And two, as you go on your own healing journey, you realize that your why changes so many times. When you get to a level when I realized, oh, why did I smoke meth? Oh, because I was trying to numb out my trauma. Whereas if you'd asked me, in my early 20s, I might have said that I smoked meth because it was an
Yeah.
opportunity. Um, but, your level of why changes as your awareness does. And so when we're trying to figure out why for other people, one, they probably don't even know why they did it, and their why is going to change all the time. So we can't be trying to figure out other
Mm-hmm.
people's whys. It just puts us in a place of victim energy straight away. So if we can eliminate that and just focus on processing through the body and empowering ourselves, it can change everything, because a lot of us spend decades in
Mm-hmm.
victim energy. And it's not to say, that what happened to you was your fault or that it wasn't bad. Like, a lot of the stuff that my clients are working through is horrific and horrible, and you just want to go and like get hood on it. You want to be like,
Yeah.
what the fuck? But looping in that's where many people spend, looping on that. And so when we pull out of why, it actually empowers you more, because you're like, this thing happened to me, but it's no longer going to dictate my habits, my patterns, my beliefs. It's actually the biggest middle
Mm-hmm.
finger you can give anybody that's hurt you, is by actually letting go of the why and the justice, and empowering yourself to not be dictated, because there is a level of ownership with reparenting. And it's why a lot of people will dip in and dip out, because when you remove the why, one thing happened, or maybe, if it was a prolonged abuse, but the same thing, one experience happens, right? But there comes the part of the journey where that thing's no longer there, and
Mm-hmm.
it's you looping on these behaviors and patterns. And so there has to be a level of ownership going, I've actually continued this pain on, and that can be really uncomfortable if you're still in victim, because it can feel like you're blaming
Yeah.
yourself. Yeah, it's a big it's really deep work, really deep work. It's quite transformational
And
though. Quite.
it's not. That's why it's called work because it is. It's it's not easy, but it's the
Yeah,
transformation is there if you're willing to look at it again from a
yeah.
different lens.
And I'll never take my clients through something I haven't
Mhm.
tried on myself. So everything I do with clients, it's not rogue. I don't just like, I will always try it on myself. And I think this is what a lot of, therapists and healers need to do is you need to actually know what it feels like, that uncomfortability of being
Mm,
in there. And I think that's one of the reasons why my work is so transformational, because the reason I know why and I can see your victim is because I have a really
yeah.
big victim, and I really battle with the justice wound. I really love
Mm,
getting justice. My inner child wants to fucking take everyone
yeah,
to jail, like, so that's why I can resonate with it. And so it's really important that we take ourselves through these processes, because there's something I've noticed. This is just like tangent
yeah.
off here, but like I've noticed that a lot of like healers or coaches or therapists will get to this level of place where I'm
Mm,
healed. And if we're honest, we're
no,
actually never healed. Like there's always shit that we're working through. And those inner parts of you, they don't just like, you don't just do a somatic work with me, say for 6 months, and we've just like, okay, 9-year-old me is like not even in here anymore. It's still there. You just are more aware and more present, and you're able to, regulate in a healthy way. Whereas a lot of people will kind of pedestal themselves as, it's done now, and then they don't continue to take themselves through the
mm,
work. And so it's becomes a little unethical, because it's like, what are you taking the clients through? And so if you are looking for people to do, deep work with, the thing that I would always be looking for is, um, are they
yeah,
hierarchying themselves? Are they still, because we're all human. I like to see a little bit of humanness when I'm working with somebody. It was one of the reasons why I loved working
yes,
with Jackie.
yeah, yeah,
So human. So still, you can be amazing at what you do and still be working through shit. And yeah, that's one of the things that I will look for is, and also um results from the clients. Are they Is there a lot of transformation happening, not just the aesthetics of things and the pieces of paper, but it's actually how much work have they done through this? Do they know, like, if something goes rogue? For instance, I've been in a breath work before, and at the end, like, literally people were so ungrounded, and because I have that level of being able to ground myself,
mm,
I was okay. But had I not been, that could have been really
dangerous.
traumatizing for me. And so it's like looking for those, yeah, like looking for those levels of care when you're doing, if you're doing stuff that's a little more, surface, things like meditation or yoga, or, the healing stuff that is more safer, then it's probably fine. But with this deep work, really like spend your time and also making sure that you connect with
Mm,
the person
I
as
was saying
well.
that
Yeah.
attunement as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Having that attunement and like listening to your inner gut, which can be hard if you're still working through
Mm,
trauma, our inner warning signals. I tell people mine's delayed by like 2 days usually, because my childhood was so chaotic. I don't really have warning bells. Either I'm kind of really adaptable, which is like a
mm,
beautiful thing, because I can go anywhere and adapt, but it's also like a bad thing, because sometimes it's not till I'm like out of the situation, I'm like, hold on, that was a bit crazy. So it's learning to like feel those when you just meet somebody and you enjoy what they do, they're a nice person,
yeah,
but just not for you.
yeah.
It's the same thing with therapy. It's really important that you have the that connection, because you will go so much deeper and the transformation will be so much more if you have that
Yeah.
connection.
And I think that's why I will always come back to you for like doing that really deep, heavy stuff. I would definitely put my hand up that I am not healed,
Yeah.
but I am doing my best to share my magic with the world from a place of integrity. But I'll come to you because I feel safe doing that really deep, deep stuff. And we have that really
Mm,
good attunement and bond. So I think that's really, really important for people to take on board with them if they are wanting to do like the trauma level therapy is yeah, do your research.
mm. And also, like something I've found, which, it's also having a little bit of relatability. Um, saying a lot of people that will work with me might have come from, low
Mhm.
income homes, or come from the hood, or have battled addiction. Not always, but a lot of my clients will make that up because they've seen where I've been and where I've gone. So it makes what they're doing
Mm,
achievable. So if you are finding somebody, having the relatability can help create safety because it feels achievable for you. Sometimes when we're working with people that haven't experienced what we've experienced, and this is nuanced as well, they unless they've always worked with that type of people, but if they haven't experienced what you have, then they might not be able to hold
mm,
what you're going through. Do you know what I mean? So
absolutely.
having a little bit of that relatability when you're working with somebody can be real
Yeah, for sure.
transformational.
So if our listeners are wanting to
Wow, what a long
no, I love
convo.
it. We could actually just stay here for days. So much we could talk about.
I know I literally just deep dive too
No,
much. I'm
and
like, I could talk
but so do
forever.
I. So get us in a room together, and oh my gosh, 3 days later.
Yeah.
How can our
Yeah.
listeners work with you? Yeah, where do they find you?
So at the moment, I am currently doing in-person workshops in Christchurch, monthly. I actually only have I think like 5 left before I leave the country. A lot of my other work is online. So I've got the Embodied Self program, which is my new therapy group program, which is a 12-week therapeutic, is doing a lot of this work that we've talked about, but also and more. It's a deep container. And then I also have one-to-one work online. I have It's Mel Jays on social media, on Instagram. It's probably the best one to come to because then it hubs off to all my other places and my website and stuff. But
Yeah.
yeah,
I'll link those
that's
down
me.
in the comments in our caption for our podcast and all platforms. Um,
Yeah, and if you made it to the
yeah, I
end, well done.
reckon just the most deepest gratitude for you, Mel,
Thank
and
you.
everything that you bring to the world, and for having this conversation. And I know that everybody that tunes in is going to receive what they need to from it. And just, yeah, the level of wisdom and depth that we can go to is just, yeah, amazing. I'm just very, very grateful for you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Anytime.